Hello and welcome to the Week 9 NFL recap. We've got one game to go in Week 9 on Monday night, but we're going to recap all of Sunday's action. I am your host, Ian O'Connor, Senior Data Analyst here at EdjSports, and with me as always is Scott Brown, our VP of Data Science here at EdjSports. Now, before we get into any of the data from the weekend, just want to remind you to subscribe to our show. Follow us or subscribe on any podcast platform of your choice. Give us a 5-star review. Help us grow our audience and get all this analysis out to even more people. We'll also have our coach rankings coming, our 2021 debut of our coach rankings this Wednesday. I will be live with our Champion Gaming brand ambassador, Katie George, going over the initial rankings, the top decisions, the best and worst decisions of the season so far, and seeing who rounds out the top of that list and who is at the bottom of the list. Probably some surprises to people listening, not to us. We know how some of these coaches that are typically viewed as aggressive and revolutionary, if you will, are sometimes come out towards the bottom. So that'll be fun to see who starts out at the top this year. So Scott, we start off just how was your weekend? You said you kind of didn't really have anything going on, so a full football weekend.
Yeah, I was laying low. Caught some of the games, though. Definitely interesting to see some big upsets happen this weekend. And, I look forward to getting into it with you. And let's get into these decisions and some of these big plays that we saw on Sunday.
Yep, and a lot of the numbers that you're going to see, especially when we go over these top fives, are available on our website and our app. It's edjsports.com. EdjSports.com, and then that app is available for both iOS and Android. So you can see our top fives there. You'll also be able to get the pregame betting information that we're going to review for Monday Night Football as well as every game for the rest of the season. So without further ado, let's jump into the biggest storyline. So there was a lot of action yesterday, a ton going on everywhere you looked. It seemed like there was a big play or a big decision. A lot of really good fourth down goes this weekend. It was pretty surprising. So you'll see our worst decisions again this week like we had a couple weeks ago aren't going to be really big, bad decisions, no double digits this year or this week in the errors. The goes is a different story. But starting off with the most recent game that was played, one of several surprises of the weekend, the Sunday Night Football game between the Titans and the Rams. So a huge win for the Titans coming in their first game without Derrick Henry. Matt Stafford threw 2 picks in this game. One of them looked like a Carson Wentz pass from, I think it was last week. The other one returned for a touchdown, 24 yards by Kevin Byard. So those two cost the Rams 19.9, so basically 20% in win probability. They fall outside of our top five, but they were still big plays in this game. And then Sean McVay, yet again, had a questionable call that didn't make our top 5. About midway through the fourth quarter, 8 minutes, 18 seconds left. They face 4th and goal at the 4. This one's pretty much over. They're down 21-3, down 18 points. But if they can get a touchdown, maybe even a 2-point conversion to cut it to 10, even with the extra point, they're at 11, and looking at a touchdown, 2-point conversion, and field goal. But he chooses to just take the field goal, one of those high probability field goals. Cost them 3.1% in pre-snap win probability. Not a lot. This would be a lot bigger if it was a closer game. They were, I think they were below 10% at this point. So that 3% is a large number when you're looking at the relative value based on what they had. But, man, just choosing kind of I guess it's not really a surrender, but at the same time,
it's a surrender.
That Rams offense, they hadn't been able to get much done all game, but you're 4th and goal at the 4. You're going to need a field goal at some point, but you still need 2 touchdowns, and you're close. That's the closest you might get.
Yeah, let's remove the gray area here, Ian. This was a surrender. When I saw this one, I was banging my head against the wall. When I looked at the data this morning, it definitely, it fell just outside of our top 5. And for the reasons you mentioned, this game was not close. Had it been a lot closer, this would have been, I would have been ripping my hair out about how bad of a call this is. Yeah, this is just cowardly, I think. I mean, obviously things were not going their way in this game, but you're the Rams. Play to win. You're one of the best teams in the NFL, and there's still 8 minutes left in this fourth quarter. A field goal down 18. What does a field goal down 18 really do for you? I mean, you gotta be putting points up at a faster and at a higher clip than 3 points right here. It cost them 3.1%. It obviously would have been a lot more had things been tighter in this game, had it been more competitive. But yeah, if you're in a game and you're playing to win, you absolutely need to be going for it here on 4th and 4 from the 4. It's a slam dunk. And I think just sort of what this reveals is that I'll say it. McVay wasn't really playing to win. Or at least that wasn't the top priority at this point in the game. It definitely feels like a give up to me, in my opinion.
Yep, and it does. It comes in at number 7. I was wrong about the number. They were above 10. They took them to 13% with the field goal. So 3 out of 13. That's still a pretty big number relative to what they had. So 7th worst of the week there from Sean McVay. I don't know what the bigger story is here, the Titans win or the Rams loss. Like, even with the wins that the Titans have had, that big loss in Week 1 is still looming pretty large. I think they're a better team, obviously, than what that Week 1 game against Arizona was. But in DVOA, they're still, I still don't think they've cracked the top half because even their wins have been close, except for this one. They've been outperformed in some of their wins as well. The Seattle game was one of those. So even the Colts game last week, I think the Colts, according to DVOA and Football Outsiders, outperformed them. But in the NFL, you find a way to win games. Might not be, those close games aren't necessarily sustainable from year to year as far as winning them all the time. It's the NFL. It's a tough league to win in, but they're finding ways to win. So the Rams offense, I think, was the most surprising to me. We know Titans, even without Derrick Henry, have pretty good offense. The Rams defense is good, but the way that Rams offense has looked and to just get completely shut out pretty much was just very surprising to me.
Yeah, and you mentioned the 2 big interceptions at the top when covering this game. It's always interesting to think about like how repeatable it is. I think it's often a point that gets brought up, how teams that sort of live by the turnover can die by the turnover. So we'll see if as we get more data rolling in about this Titans defense, how sustainable their performance last night was. But yeah, if you look at their record and sort of the games they played, it is interesting. They definitely got their butts handed to them Week 1 against the Cardinals. They've beaten some good teams, but like you mentioned, like kind of winning ugly. Outperformed according to DVOA in some of those games. They beat the Bills by 3, Colts by 3. So definitely kind of eking it out. Also beat the Seahawks by 3. But then, they've also beaten a lot of pretty quality teams. So, they're sort of still a question mark at this point. They sit at 7-2, first in the AFC South. Definitely a very interesting team as they've taken down some heavyweights. But, we'll see. We will see if they're able to continue that performance and keep it up throughout the rest of the season. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, and that loss to the Jets still looming kind of large. That one's a little bit more recent. Still, still don't think the Jets and don't think the Titans are a bad team by any means. Just it's been ugly, but like I said, they're getting it done, and they're at 7-2, I think now. They haven't had their bye yet, so 7-2, so looking pretty good right now. And a close game that really no one expected to be close. Falcons and Saints, so an NFC South showdown. There really wasn't a ton in the way or as far as decisions go in this one. But the biggest play of this game is also the most impactful play of the entire week so far. Late in the fourth quarter, the Saints had stormed back to take the lead. They were up 25-24 after being down 24-26. So scored 19 straight points to take a 1-point lead with just 1 minute, 1 second left. After the kickoff, 1st and 10, their own 25, Matt Ryan completes a pass to Cordero Patterson on the sideline, who ran down the sideline, broke a tackle, looked like almost stepped out of bounds. A replay upheld the play, went down for 64 yards, adding 50.9% win probability, taking them up to 95.3 at that point with basically a very high probability field goal. Saints can't stop the clock, or they have 1 timeout left, so the Falcons can take it all the way down to run out the clock for a high probability field goal for the win, and that's exactly what they did. So a big surprise there. It kind of looked like the Saints, were going to come back and take the game as we thought they would before the game. But, Cordero Patterson, like kind of a guy that, especially if you played fantasy, it seemed like every year, those first few years in the league, or up until this year, it was Cordero Patterson, as a sleeper. He's going to go off, kind of been a bust. Basically, I don't remember when he was drafted. He wasn't necessarily, I don't remember if he was a super high round guy or first few rounds. I feel like could be wrong there. But finally, just is in the right situation here in Atlanta, and they're using him all over the place. Yeah,
Cordero Patterson, I wouldn't call him a bust. He's definitely staked his career on the big play, right? Mm-hmm. First round pick from the Minnesota Vikings.
I was way off. I didn't remember him being a first rounder.
No, yeah, I remember that as a Chicago Bears fan. He actually had a tenure in Chicago as well. But yeah, he known for his return skills, I think, more than anything else. But it's great to see, I think one of the purest things about the NFL, you tune in on Sunday and you just get to see the best athletes in the world make big plays and big moments. And I think this game, this week was certainly featured the biggest one, right? Cordero Patterson just absolutely catching a bomb, making a big play with so little time left and clinching it for Atlanta. They're able to pull off the upset against New Orleans. I think they went into that game about 6.5-point dogs, so definitely a very notable upset in a weekend that had a few of them, and certainly some bigger ones than this. But yeah, great win for Atlanta. They sort of are hanging around there in their division,
yep.
And so it'll be interesting.
At 500, 4-4.
Yeah. I feel like with Matt Ryan at the helm, a team that made the Super Bowl just several years ago. It's sort of I feel like the Falcons have sort of been lost in the shuffle. They don't really come to the top of mind when you think about the best teams now. But yeah, they're hanging around. We'll see if they can make themselves competitive for a home stretch, and who knows, maybe they're probably quite a long shot here to make the playoffs, but they got to keep fighting, and this is a big divisional game to win against the rival Saints. So good to see.
Yeah, and now on to another close game. This was one where we had a comeback where the team actually did pull it off and got the victory, the Ravens. So one of the more exciting games of the afternoon. Vikings were up most of the game. The Ravens found themselves down 14 on two separate occasions. They had a game low 9.9% win probability after Lamar Jackson's interception in the second quarter, I believe. Going into halftime, they cut it to 7. They were at 26 points. And then the first play of the second half, the kickoff, Minnesota returns it for a touchdown, 98 yards, I believe it was, and cuts the Ravens' win probability almost in half, down to 13.4 from 26. Didn't make our top 5 most impactful, but big play there. But they were able to come back, and Harbaugh just did what he does, aggressive. They had a 4th and 2 go, I think, at their own 36. They had a 4th and 1 at their own 27. Just a handful of good 4th downs. They almost let it slip away into overtime, though. So Kirk Cousins responded back after Baltimore took the lead with a couple minutes left, just over a minute in the game, threw a touchdown pass to Adam Thielen. And then the opening drive, the Vikings are driving down in overtime. They get to the Minnesota 33, 2nd and 6, 6:47 left in overtime. Great play by Anthony Barr. I don't know if this was one that you saw, but one of the plays of the day, just gets his hand up there, gets it on the pass, comes down with the interception, kind of tips it to himself, I think, gets the interception, costing the Ravens 38.5% in win probability, the second most impactful play of the week. But they were able to hang on. They overcame that and were able to end it on a Justin Tucker walk-off field goal, as he's done many times in the fourth quarter or overtime.
Yeah, that game could have ended so differently after that opening drive interception in overtime. But Kirk Cousins, that Minnesota offense just couldn't get anything going on that subsequent drive. Basically, I think they pick up a yard or two and then go 3 and out, give the ball right back to Lamar Jackson and that dangerous Baltimore offense. The rest is history. And once Baltimore finds themselves in that spot, right, with Justin Tucker in that special teams unit, it's hard to beat, right? They're in such a good. It's like a cheat code, right? Yeah. They only need to get just into field goal range with the best kicker of all time on their team. So, I think it's interesting. Minnesota didn't really have a competitive or an interesting 4th down decision since it was 4th and 9 from about their own 40. But I think you could really make a case to be extra aggressive in that situation, just based on who's across the field from you, right? And as we mentioned, Justin Tucker. So, I don't hold out a lot of hope or faith that Zimmer would find the go on something like a 4th and 5 or a 4th and 6 or something like that. But I think over here at Edge, we definitely think that would be the right call given the circumstances.
Yeah, and Mike Zimmer actually did he had a fake punt on a 4th and 2, I believe. He had a pretty good call earlier in the day too. I think he was in his own territory. I'm having trouble finding that number right now, but he was 4th and goal from the 2-yard line. Went for it. They ended up getting a Ravens defensive pass interference. But the decision to go for it increased their pre-snap win probability by a little over 2%, so not a lot there, but still a good decision from a guy that we would almost expect to kick the field goal there.
Right.
And then an interesting stat I saw on Justin Tucker yesterday. So he's now never missed a field goal in the final minute of the fourth quarter or in overtime.
Yeah, that's cool.
Which is, he did have that missed extra point against the Saints a couple years ago, I think 2018 or 2019, which doesn't count in that statistic, but still, that guy is just as close to automatic as you can get with the game on the line. So awesome to see there. Ravens get the comeback victory. Moving on to another close game. This one wasn't as exciting as some of these others, but it came down to the play calling of Brandon Staley, who we've seen do this all year so far. He got some criticism in the game against Baltimore. They were already down 14 when he went for it in his own territory. Later in the game, did the same thing. But the final drive of the game led to our top 2 best decisions of the week and 2 of our top of the season. I think they come in at number 2 and number 4. We had Matt LaFleur's decision last week. That was number 1. Harbaugh came in around 16%, putting him at number 3 now. But the first one came 2:48 in the game, 4th and 1 at the Philly 39. Decides to go for it, tied at 24 instead of kicking a field goal. So they could have kicked the field goal to go up 3, but still leaving 2 minutes, 45 seconds left for Philly. I think each team had, the Chargers had 2 timeouts. Philly still had all 3 of their timeouts left at this point. It was a 19.5% increase in pre-snap win probability. They ended up picking up the first down, getting 2 yards, the best 4th down goal of the week and second best of the season. So why don't you talk about, Scott, the situation there? Something we've covered before a little bit, but just why you don't kick the field goal there. Yeah. Why that's such a large number on this decision.
Brandon Staley, you love to see it. I think
first-year head coach, too.
Yeah, and, there was that game earlier on in the season where he might have been a little bit too aggressive, but you know what? I'm going to go ahead and give him the benefit of the doubt. In retrospect, you're rarely ever going to see a coach that errs on the side of being too aggressive in the NFL. We kind of live and breathe this week in, week out. We see that even the coaches who we think of as the most aggressive in certain spots don't find the right call. So really impressed here that Staley found a go. The big thing is the clock. Absolutely the clock. Timeouts are definitely a factor as well. The defense, the Eagles in this case, had all 3 of their timeouts. So I guess notably important as well that the Chargers also have 2 of theirs. So you have something to play with, right? Mm-hmm. If you go for it and fail, but having control, right? Being in control of dictating how much time runs off the clock, super valuable here. This is the kind of like the 2-for-1 concept in basketball, but in football here it's about just denying, if you can, outright denying the Eagles any possession over the course of this game. You want to bleed this thing down and hopefully kick a very high probability field goal. So going forward here in a 4th and 1, definitely the right move. I think it surprises many what happens if you don't make it, right? But I think importantly, you have the 2-minute warning still. You have some timeouts, so you can get the ball back, and you're not giving the ball over to the Eagles here in a situation where it's just like an automatic field goal, right? They still have to run offense and pick up yardage to do so. So, the clock is just. I think people have a good understanding that the clock is important, but they probably just underrate how important it is, and really being the team. Retaining possession, letting that, dictating the clock, letting it bleed down when it's in their favor, and then also, but still leaving yourself some outs, right? And so I think props to Staley here, finding the go, definitely the right call, even though I think many coaches in the NFL wouldn't have been able to find it. So good for him.
Yeah, but 2:48 is a lot of time left for a team, especially in a tie game where you just need a field goal to get down the field. So really good call. And I mentioned Staley, first year as coach. Also a defensive guy, so really, really exciting and pretty cool to see him taking on that aggressive mindset from an offensive perspective as well. When a lot of times I feel like some of those guys like Belichick, who we'll see it with an error, tend to err on the side of caution and kind of want to trust their defense, if you will. And so cool from him. And then so same drive, they converted that, I said, with 2 yards. Come down with 1:45 left. Philly has used all of their timeouts at this point, and just before this, the Chargers used their last timeout as well. So 1:45 left in the game, facing another 4th and 1, just 11 yards closer at the Philly 28. Decides to go for it again. This is plus 15.7%. Ended up getting Herbert up the middle for 1 yard to get the first down. This was our second best 4th down go of the week. And then Eckler ended up breaking off a run, getting them a very high probability field goal, I think, inside the 15-yard line to win the game. But same situation here, like you said. Even 1:45 with no timeouts, it's still enough time where even if you kick the field goal here, Philly's going to have time to do something, or at least try to do something. And the only way to ensure they don't do that is if you can get the first down and run the clock out and kick that field goal. And that's exactly what they did. Dustin Hopkins, newly signed after being released by Washington, hit the game winner. So close game, exciting game. Another close game, a kind of less exciting game, if you will, but both teams under 10 points. Very surprisingly in this one, at least for one of these teams. One of the kind of weirder games and really not the best officiated game. I saw bits and pieces of this and just saw a lot of talk, even on the broadcast, about – or a broadcaster might have been Red Zone, of them kind of having a rough game when it comes to officiating here. But Bills and Jaguars. So the Bills were heavy favorites. 15.5, I think you said at close, Scott. And we actually had this as our fair value spread came in at 8 points in favor of Buffalo. So still expected them to win most of the time, but thought this one would be a little bit closer on the road for Buffalo, and it was. But there were a couple key calls and plays in this game. Urban Meyer had a first down or a fourth down call early in the game that was very good, and had one late in the game too where I wasn't sure he was going to make the right decision. He's had one of those guys that has kind of gone both ways this year. But fourth quarter, early, a lot of time left. It's tied at 6, 13-31. They have 4th and 1 at the Buffalo 11. So a fairly high probability field goal here. Even for Matthew Wright, who I can't remember if it was before or after this, missed 3 straight field goals. 42-yarder, 47-yarder, and 42-yarder.
Ouch.
With a penalty, so the first one didn't count. The second one was a defensive penalty, and he missed the third one. So 3 straight kicks he missed there. But this time, he chose to go with the offense. Urban Meyer did, adding 8% in pre-snap win probability. Got 3 yards in the first down. Comes in as our 5th best fourth down go of the week. He ended up having a 4th and goal and choosing to kick the field goal later, which was also an error, not as big of a decision as we had here at 8%. Didn't make our top 5 errors, but still a slight error there, but they ended up winning the game. That was the field goal that decided it. But so Jacksonville will go on to hurt the Bills' chances, though, with our 3rd most impactful play of the weekend, with the Josh Allen sack on Josh Allen. We know you've probably heard it over and over since yesterday. You had Josh Allen of our Kentucky Wildcats here, at least for me, but here in our home state at EdjSports, with a big day, an interception, a sack of Josh Allen, and Josh Allen recovered a Josh Allen fumble. So kind of weird scenario going on there, but pretty cool to see.
Yeah, missed opportunity. Shall we call this the Josh Allen Bowl?
Yeah.
I don't think we saw this one playing out in this way. As this was definitely a massive upset. No one had this on the radar. Although I guess you could say maybe Edge would have gave you some insight in this one pregame. But yeah, 15.5 point market spread going into this one. So to see the Jags win by 3, just absolutely shocking. And yeah, I think Urban Meyer came through with the right play call here. It was the 5th best decision of the week for us, and give him credit. But also, of course, you should be doing this, right? I mean, What do they got to lose? What do they got to lose? You might as well go down swinging. And with a 4th and 1 from Buffalo's 11 in a tie game, sort of early 4th quarter. You push the pedal to the metal, try to go up a touchdown. He should probably be surprised as anybody that Buffalo only managed to put up 6 points at that point. You really can't be counting on. You really don't want to.
How many times have we seen a team just go down and get the touchdown after that?
Right.
Because Buffalo's a good team.
It's you can't. Props, obviously great execution. Game plan and execution to keep them to 6 points to that point. But it's just. That Buffalo offense is so high-powered, so good. They can put up points in a blink of an eye. You really don't want to have to count on that. So going forward here, really the right move. As you mentioned, added 8% to their win probability. So right call there. Props to Urban Meyer. And really just, I think like everybody else, just sort of stunned at this outcome. Buffalo, we've seen it 2 times this season. Just when they face kind of bottom barrel teams, just absolutely blow them out of the water. So, there's really no fault to thinking that this would be more of the same. But yeah, we're really surprised. And yeah, you can kind of probably hear it in my trailing off. They just absolutely stunned. I mean, they beat the Texans 40-0. They beat the Dolphins 35-0 earlier this season. And
they did struggle with the Dolphins a little bit last week, though. So this is 2 games in a row that the offense has struggled to get things going. They ended up putting up 26 points, but a lot of that game just kind of sludged along.
Struggled and won by 15. I mean, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. That could be struggling for the Bills, but just not a whole lot more to say. Just really stunned. And I kind of thought baseball season was over, and maybe I was wrong with the 6-9 scoreline, but. Especially in modern NFL where you just see teams lighten up the scoreboard. I think this was probably like the one way in which the game could play out for the Jags to win is 9-6.
Yep.
But cool to see.
Yeah, and that sack I mentioned at the end of the game that pretty much forced a 4th and 16 last gasp effort for the Bills. It cost Buffalo 28.3% in win probability, which was our 3rd most impactful play of the weekend. Now on to the other game that no one really saw coming, this outcome. Going to kind of cover this one briefly. There weren't really a ton. This one got out of hand pretty quickly. But it was Broncos-Cowboys. Denver ended up 30-0 before winning 30-16. Bit of an up and down game for McCarthy. Overall, he actually had a pretty good day. He had a fourth and 1 go from the Broncos 38-yard line on the opening drive. Was worth 4.6% in pre-snap win probability. Ended up getting stopped. They forced a punt by Denver. Once again faced 4th and short in Broncos territory at 4th and 2. And at the Denver 20, I believe it was, chose to go for it again, giving them 2.3% greater chance to win. Got stopped again. Ended up giving up a touchdown on the 3rd possession, though. I think little recency bias here. McCarthy, with those 2 failures on the first 2 drives, faced another one, 4th and 1 from his own 45. Ended up being the worst 4th down decision of the week at 5.6%. This is one of those weeks, though. This, probably would have made our top 5 any other week, but wouldn't have been number 1 because, we had a lot of coaches making good decisions that ended up on our best decisions. But this is still a bad, you've already gone for it twice. You're at your own 45, nearing midfield. Yes, you maybe have kind of struggled to get things going so far, but with that offense, you got to go for it.
Yeah.
It's a 5.6% pre-snap error there at the very end of the first quarter.
Yeah, I don't get it. It's a head-scratcher. I guess maybe they ran out of plays or something for on 4th down. Or
Don't need many of them, just Zeke or even Tony Pollard.
Yeah, just turning around and handing.
I know Zeke kind of limped off the field at one point. I don't know if this was it, but Tony Pollard's been every bit as good of Zeke, it seems like, for a lot of the year.
Yeah, not a lot to really dive into here. I think you pretty much highlighted what likely is at play. Some recency bias. You go for it and fail. You feel kind of burned and maybe a little towel between your legs, so that way when the next decision comes up, you're like, I don't want to feel that again, punt. And this one is just an absolute slam dunk. I know it's early in the game. We're drawing to the end of the first quarter, but 4th and 1 from your own 45, punting is just such a lame move here because you're really capped at how much you can swing field position. And 4th and 1, like with your really high-powered offense, you're going to be converting at such a high clip. You're already down 6-0. I know you entered this game as a big favorite, but you really need to be pushing your advantage here when you get these decisions. And unfortunately, McCarthy didn't find the right call. And I guess sort of zooming out again, this is just another big upset and a really weird game. It wasn't even close. And the Cowboys entered as 10-point favorites. They were pretty much held scoreless most of the game. I think they didn't really start putting up points until late in the 4th quarter. Midway through the 4th quarter. So, they lost by 14, but man, it looked worse than that, to be honest with you. Really, really weird game. I guess we'll see how Dak proceeds forward. I know he was coming off of injury in this one, so it'll be something to keep an eye on. Who knows how much that factored into that sort of performance across the board for the Cowboys here. But yeah, really just a weird one, and don't want to, I guess, overreact and take too much from it, but certainly I think we would have expected a lot more from the Cowboys in this one.
Yeah, and that Denver defense, even though they just shipped off Von Miller, still has some really good playmakers on that side of the ball in defense. So in the offense, Teddy Bridgewater, we know what he is. He's a capable quarterback. They've got some good receivers, good running backs. So it's a surprising outcome, I think, more so, even by who won. but the fact that they won by as much as they did was more surprising. But it was good to see McCarthy even later in the second half though remain aggressive instead of kind of surrendering. They're down 19 to nothing the third quarter, 4th and 1 on their own 40-yard line. He chose to go for it again. Was a 2.7% increase, a relative increase of almost 50%. So all told, it was a pretty good showing for McCarthy. Just that one.
That one bad one.
Yeah, coming up on midfield was just a big one, a 4th and 1 there. But that'll do it kind of for our recap, overall game recap. We'll move in now to our top fives. We'll probably move kind of quickly through these. We see a lot of the same situations kind of pop up from week to week. But we're going to start with the most impactful plays. Number 5 coming in was the Raiders and Giants. This was the very end of the game. The Raiders need a touchdown, an extra point to tie. No timeouts with 44 seconds left. 2nd and 10 at the Giants' 13, so they're knocking on the door. Derek Carr gets sacked. He fumbles, recovered by Giants. Game over. Really not much to it other than that. That was 24.5% win probability, taking them down to 0. I guess 0.0001 maybe. There's a chance on a kneel down that they fumble. I don't know if that's ever happened. So number 5 there. Number 4 was the opening drive of the game, Bengals-Browns. The Bengals drove down and had 3rd and goal at the 3, looking like they were going to put some points on the board. Ended up being a 99-yard pick 6 for Denzel Ward and the Browns, getting started. A whole lot of scoring for Cleveland and Cincinnati yesterday. That one was 26.7% win probability decrease for the Bengals. Was there anything from this game? It was a blowout. First game without Odell Beckham. Cleveland looked better. I saw some stats saying that they're typically better without him than with him. Kind of a small sample size and only one game here, but kind of a surprising outcome. We expected we had Cleveland as very slight favorites at 1 point, I think, compared to the market was 2.5 for the Bengals, but didn't expect a blowout like that.
Yeah, definitely not. Definitely a surprising outcome this weekend. Just sort of lost in the fray with all the big upsets, but yeah, definitely. No Odell Beckham now for the Cleveland Browns. His tenure there was sort of mired, I think, both in injury and just I think a bit of underperformance. Yeah. I think when you put those two pieces together, Baker Mayfield and OBJ, you sort of really expected fireworks, right? You expected them to possibly be one of the best, quarterback wide receiver duos in the NFL, and it was really underwhelming. I think when you look at the stats, you actually see in some cases that Baker Mayfield tends to perform better or have better games when OBJ wasn't on the field. So
it's almost kind of the opposite of that. Stephon Diggs from Minnesota. He goes from a run-first team in Minnesota to Buffalo and just kind of explodes. We already knew what he was, but wasn't getting as many targets. And then Odell going to a run-first team, in Cleveland after being kind of a featured guy in the Giants. They had kind of a tumultuous ending there, but still just the volume I don't think was there for him, and they just brought in a bunch of weapons, and it was just tough for him to really get anything going.
Yeah, and for whatever reason, they still have good talent on that wide receiver unit with Jarvis Landry, and looks like Peoples-Jones is stepping up as a big playman for Mayfield. So it'll be interesting to see how that unit, who steps up, and if the Browns are able to kind of carry the momentum forward from this really strong performance.
Yeah, so moving on to number 3 of the most impactful plays was the Josh Allen sack that we just covered there. It was a 28.3% decrease. And then number 2 was Ravens, Lamar Jackson's pass that was intercepted in overtime, cost them 38.5. And then number 1 we covered was the Falcons' long pass, 64-yard gain to Cordero Patterson down to the New Orleans 11. Instant red zone there for the game-winning field goal. That was a 50.9% increase in win probability. Now we're going to move on to some decisions. Before we do, again, don't forget to rate, review, subscribe to all of our EdjSports shows on your podcast platform of choice. We're also available on YouTube as well, where we'll have these shows. That's where we will have our coach rankings coming up this week and every week, as well as pregame previews for every single game of every single week. So now moving on to our top 5 best decisions of the week on 4th down, starting at number 5, Andy Reid for the Chiefs. Opening drive, 4th and 1 at their own 45. Choose to go for it. Kind of a no-brainer, especially with that offense against that Packers team. Defense actually held up very well in that game. We know the Chiefs' offense hasn't really lived up to its standards, but Green Bay's defense really impressed me in that one. And really the last few weeks, they've had some big guys step up. Chris Barnes has had some big plays. Devondre Campbell has really stepped up, and those guys in the absence of Zadarius Smith, and then still missing Jerry Alexander. But to hold the Chiefs to 13, I don't think there were any turnovers. That's been the big thing for the Chiefs this year, has been turning the ball over. So really to hold them to 13 points without generating, a bunch of turnovers was impressive. But this one, you've got Jordan Love on the other side, first NFL start, first regular season start, I should say, and just you have to go for it. Andy Reid knows that. He did. It was 5.2% increase, which is a pretty big number for that early on the opening drive. Yeah,
and I mean, good to see Andy Reid making the right call here. Like you mentioned, we think this is a no-brainer. You're at midfield here at the KC 45. You have a 4th and 1. I mean, in today's NFL, with that level of offense, you got to just go, right? Who knows? I know people might come back and say, well, there's 12:38 left in the first quarter. Do you really need to do this yet? With so much game left to be played, right? Like, push your edge. Put the edge you have, right, is your offense. And Patrick Mahomes, all of those athletes on their side of the ball. Go for it. Definitely the right move here. You're going to be converting at a super high rate, and you definitely just sort of want to be thinking from the perspective of maximizing all of your chances at this point, right? There's not really a whole lot of situational football to really take into account here. It's just go. And you have something that, although it kind of seems scary, a 4th down, it's 4th and 1. You're going to be converting it. Your alternatives aren't great because you're at midfield. So it's really a slam dunk, and good on Andy Reid for making the right call.
So that was number 5 of the best decisions. Moving on to number 4 was one of those that I mentioned from John Harbaugh. This one's kind of surprising, not really from him. I'm sure, I didn't see the broadcast of this one, but they may have been kind of questioning this a little bit, because 4th and 1 at his own 27, down 7, but 2:20 left in the third quarter. We're not even talking about the end of the game. This is still, 17 plus minutes of football left, choosing to go for it, but we think it's a great decision. A 5.6% increase in win probability prior to the snap there, and really not surprising to see from Harbaugh. Even some other coaches, Brandon Staley, we mentioned, wouldn't surprise us. Zach Taylor even has been really good going forward, even on his own side of the field sometimes this year. So that was 5.6%. And then the top 3 we've covered already, so we'll just kind of breeze through these. Jacksonville, Urban Meyer's 4th and 1 go from the Buffalo 11 early in the fourth quarter and tied at 6. That was a 8% increase in win probability. And then the 2 Chargers decisions, the 4th and 1 at the 28 was 15.7, and 4th and 1 at the Philly 39 was 19.5. So that rounds out the top 5 best decisions. Now on to our top 5 worst decisions. Before that, just want to give you another reminder about our site at EdjSports.com. We redid over the offseason. We have an app now as well that allows you to get all of the NFL news, betting analysis for pregame and live in-game. You can see the updates and win probability on the site. It's EdjSports, EDJ Sports, available for both iOS and Android, and then at EdjSports.com. So now, Scott, I mentioned the top 5 worst aren't really terrible this week because there were a lot of really good decisions this week. It seemed like, especially in the first half, it was left and right. There were just 4th down go, 4th down go, 4th down go, and it kind of held up through the rest of the games. But number 5 is Raiders-Giants. They're down 4 with only 9.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. 4th and 3 at the Giants 7. And this is Bisaccia now taking over for John Gruden. Chooses to kick the field goal. Cost them 3.6% in win probability. So, yes, a field goal in this situation gets you within 1. But a touchdown, obviously gives you the lead. That's what you want to do. You want to, go for the win. Because even if you get a field goal and you say, okay, a field goal gets us the win, you still got to hold the Giants and hope they don't score a field goal or a touchdown. They ended up scoring a field goal. I don't know if it was the next drive. But Las Vegas also missed this field goal here.
Yeah, that really hurts. And
they're usually reliable. Carlson, too, from only 25.
Yeah, I think he's had a pretty long streak going up until this miss. I could be wrong about that. But, yeah, here, you just have the ball in such a valuable part of the field where even if you go for it and don't succeed, you're still okay, right? You've really pinned them deep as the Raiders had 4th and 3 from New York 7. They can pick up a first down here, set up a goal to go situation. They can just outright score the touchdown here. So there's a lot of ways for this to play out and work in their favor. Obviously, going for it and not getting it's not great, but it's also not the end of the world either. we've covered situations like this, and we really think when you sort of hit that crossover point of yards to go, and I think we're there with 3 yards to go. It's the right move for the Raiders to go for it here. New head coach, sort of interim head coach situation there for the Raiders. So, probably not wanting to stick his neck out too much and take a chance that sort of blows up in his face, get some egg on his face. But, if you're really, I think, playing to win this game and you find yourself down 4 here, it's definitely the right move to keep the offense on the field and go for it. And that Raiders offense is pretty respectable unit. So, not a good way to sort of enter onto our radar, I think, unfortunately. But maybe he's able to turn it around. And to be fair to Gruden sort of had a mixed record as well when he was still coaching the Raiders. So it'll just sort of be a situation to watch as his tenure moves on there in Las Vegas.
Yeah, and you mentioned Gruden there, kind of mixed. And that's something I was going to mention is, this season he was actually, on one of the more aggressive sides. It seemed like he'd kind of come around. You'd think that's kind of more of an organizational kind of mindset.
Yeah,
but it could be one of those edge case. Like we said, it's 3.6. That's a decent size late in the game. That's really not as big of a decision there. They're still at 38.5% to win on the field goal, so it's about a 10% relative. Which we see a lot more throughout the games, but still a situation where you would think that they would think to go for it there. But moving on to number 4, I mentioned Bill Belichick coming in early in the game. I think this was their opening drive, if not, or the opening drive of the game, or the Patriots' opening drive. 4th and 1 at his own 45. Exact same situation we saw Andy Reid in.
Yeah.
Different team, not as good of an offense there. Better defense, but still first quarter, 10.5 left, chooses to punt. It's a 3.8% decrease in win probability by not going for it there. Number 2, we got to tie at number 2. One of it is the Chiefs down 17-6 against the Dolphins. 4th and goal at the 1. 11:35 left in the fourth quarter, kicking a field goal. 4.9% error. This is one I didn't even know coaches kick field goals on 4th and goal from the 1, unless it's the end of the first half or a game winner. But it seems like every week we look at it like, oh, that's an obvious one, but we include it. I kind of see the thinking here. You're down 11, you kick a field goal, you get down to 8. It's a touchdown and 2-point conversion. But at the same time, are you really? What are the odds of you getting back down to the 1-yard line?
Yeah,
why not take the touchdown? Not take the touchdown. Yeah. It's not an automatic, but still go for the touchdown there.
No, Ian, don't go over to the dark side. Come back.
Not at all.
Come back.
You have to go for it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I didn't think this existed anymore, but here we are. I think Cauley, the head coach of the Texans, I think he was on record this offseason when asked about analytics and how that impacts his decision making. He sort of downplayed it, or I think outright basically dismissed it. And if it doesn't make sense to him, if it doesn't agree with his gut, then he's not going to do it. And looks like we saw this eventually rear its head in this game yesterday. So not a whole lot to say about this one. 4th and 1 from the 1, and you're down. You're down by 11 points. Like, you need to score points quickly. And if you're not going to go for it on 4th and 1 from the 1, like, when? Yeah.
Same coach that declined a penalty to give himself 4th down to punt instead of accepting a penalty to get another shot at 3rd down earlier against the Browns. So some questionable decisions coming out of Houston this year. Not only this year, the whole organization seems kind of questionable at this point with all that they've got going on. But coming in, tied at number 2. So the other one at number 2 is Andy Reid. So he had a good decision. He had one here where, 4th and 1 at their own 29. They're already up 7-0 late in the second quarter. They get the ball after halftime, but they choose to punt. It's a 4.9% error, same as the one for the Texans. You can look at it both ways. Like, the odds of that offense picking up 1 yard is pretty high, over 60%, I would imagine.
This one's much more nuanced.
You look at it and you punt, you're giving Jordan Love the ball. You're not expecting much. You're probably going to get the ball back quickly, but still.
Yeah, but you're at 2.5 minutes left in that second quarter, so that kind of coming out ahead on the possession battle is really, really a nice big win to pick up here. So I think that's what our model is really picking up on is, with both teams having 3 timeouts, Chiefs are able to pick up a first down. There's going to be just a lot of scenarios where they're going to continue moving on down the field when they pick up a fresh set of downs, and they're going to be able to basically deny the Packers any sort of valuable possession before the end of the half, right? And that's big because it's not like the end of the game where the Packers are just going to go into a mode where they're calling timeouts necessarily. And so, yeah, you're the Chiefs. You get to really enjoy and maximize the time left for you without being docked at all for giving the ball back over to the Packers here by punting it. So, yeah, it's I think a more kind of understandable mistake by Coach Reid. Of course, we would have liked to see him go for it, but, it is what it is. And he sort of also, I think, in general, over a long, larger sample, makes the right call most of the time. But every now and then we have one of these crop up where, we just sort of disagree and have a different view on it.
Yep. Nobody's perfect. So, even these coaches, kind of let their guts get into it, or sometimes they, want to say, hey, this situation, yes, it's a 5% error. There's still an 82% chance to win. That was never really in doubt. Score was close, but I don't know if anyone really thought that Jordan Love was going to mount a comeback. But this one, they actually got lucky. Taylor, the kick returner for the Packers, looked like kind of got pushed or was getting blocked. He got knocked over. Ball glanced off his foot. And Kansas City recovered. So they got the ball back. Only managed a field goal out of it after having the ball at the 10. But still, that one comes in, tied for number 2. Number 1 on the worst decisions for fourth down decisions this week we covered was McCarthy. Overall had a good game, but this was a 5.6% error. 4th and 1 from his own 45, down only 6 at the end of the first quarter. That's one with that offense, even though they've already missed 2. We say they're probably over 60. Another one that's over 60% to convert. Well, you missed 2, so you're going to get 1. You would think they'd be able to get 1 eventually. So that one rounds out our top 5 worst fourth down decisions. Yeah, you can see all of the top 5s on our website, EdjSports.com, and our EdjSports app. Again, available for both iOS and Android. Now we'll move on. We'll kind of quickly go through our Monday Night Football preview. Really isn't a ton here from our perspective. I don't think the Bears, just looking to get more reps out of Justin Fields, really looked the best he's looked all year last week against the 49ers. Had some, that's not really saying a lot. I see you kind of not shaking your head a little bit. It really isn't saying much, but still maybe took a couple steps forward, and we'll see against an even better defense in the Steelers tonight. Steelers looking to stay in the mix. I think they've won 3 straight now, and they're 3rd in the AFC North, I believe. The Browns, I think, moved ahead of them with the win yesterday. But they can get back. They've got the tiebreaker over Cleveland. So, Scott, how does our model see this one shaking out tonight on Monday Night Football? No Manning cast, so we won't have a Manning curse for next week, although that one was carried forward with the Bills' loss. But how do we see this one shaking out?
Yeah, we're right in line with the market. Just kind of cutting to the chase. We have the fair value as Pittsburgh -7, right where the market is. So not really a whole lot to report there. We're right in the middle. Don't really think that either side is really a desirable bet to be made there. But kind of shifting over to the total for this game, market has it at 39.5. I mean, that's got to be, I didn't look into this yet, but that's got to be one of the lowest totals for a game all season, I think. Especially as we've, generally seen scoring go up in the NFL over the last 2 and really, last season in particular. So, our model likes the over here. We have the total for the game at 44. I know that's not a super exciting thing as these offenses and these teams, the branding of these teams is really, smash mouth football, Pittsburgh and Chicago, 3 yards on a cloud of dust. But, this is 2021. I think things have changed, and I think we'll see more points scored than maybe what a lot of people would expect. There's just a very low bar, right? 39.5 is just such a low total. So, our model likes playing the over in this one. As we sort of shift and take a look at how the public is placing their bets and putting their dollars down, both from the perspective of number of bets and the amount of money wagered is coming out in favor of Pittsburgh. So there are more bettors placing their bets on Pittsburgh, as well as in aggregate more dollars backing Pittsburgh. So the thing to really make from that is when those things line up, it's sort of a cross-up. There's really not a clear takeaway there. If we saw, in general, when we see more bets placed on one team and then the money kind of counter that would be sort of the narrative of the retail bets versus the sharp money. But in this game, we don't have that. So it's both of those numbers sit at about 60 63, 65 or so to 35 in favor of Pittsburgh. So, really, and as we mentioned, we think that this game is pretty fairly valued. So from that perspective, there's really not a lot to glean from that in my eyes. I think in general, I think the bias here is to